Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque news video. For this video, I wanted to talk about a topic, something that I've actually mentioned before in a past video. This one talking about something that went through a solemn anniversary just this month. In fact, it's been 30 years since this unsolved quadruple homicide occurred here in the city of Austin, Texas. Definitely something that to this day many of the older Austinites remember. Many of the younger ones are finding out for the first time. It is absolutely the case that has the most bearing when it comes to Austin shifting towards another reality. As been often mentioned, this is the case, this is the incident, the very tragic incident that caused Austin to quote unquote grow up. Like, in other words, a lot of things that were happening in other parts of the country, a lot of things that people would always think it's happening only over there, never here. Well, in 1991, it absolutely occurred here. And it definitely left an unfortunate, very sad and tragic mark. And of course, I'm talking about the 1991 Austin Yogurt Shop murders. So let's go ahead and let's talk about some of that information here. Again, it's going through its 30th anniversary just this month. And I'll include the link below for the original video that I did maybe about 5 or so years ago. It goes to show that every single time that there's a solemn anniversary for this occurrence, people are still going to talk and feature about it because there's still a lot of mystery associated with it. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. So this all occurred on Friday, December 6, 1991, there at a location up north Austin that used to be, I can't believe it's Yogurt Shop. In fact, this was some place that I visited for my last video. Again, I'll include the link below in case you haven't seen it. But I went there because I wanted to pay tribute to the 4 poor souls that ended up dying there on that fateful night. You can go there actually to this very day, and I believe it's today a nail salon, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody might have to correct me on this. It's been since the last time I was there when I did my video. It's been those couple of years since I visited. But yes, if you go there and you go outside, you'll see actually a plaque associated with those 4 poor souls, those 4 young women, and what happened to them. In fact, just the other week, when the 30th anniversary was happening, there were reports, and I was watching it online on the news, there were reports of people outside, a small group, in other words, not too big, but not too small at the same time, who were there visiting, paying tribute to these 4 women. So their names were Amy Ayers, who was 13 years old at the time, Eliza Thomas, who was 17, and then Jennifer Harbison, and then who was 17 as well, and then her sister, Sarah Harbison, who was 15. They were there at the time because 2 of them, Jennifer and Eliza, happened to be employees at the shop, and then Sarah was there with her friend Amy because they were all going to get a ride afterward. What makes this case so frustrating is because there is a set of eyewitnesses to what occurred. Like, in other words, right before this very horrific act happened, there were people there up to the last minute, just, either before or after closing at 11 p.m. that saw what could be the perpetrators themselves. And in fact, so much frustrating evidence points to them being there, but it's, for lack of better proof, like 100% smoking gun evidence. It's the idea that you have to have the preponderance of evidence in court to make sure that somebody is 100% guilty. And even though there were eyewitnesses, to this day, nobody can pinpoint with 100% surety who they are, or at least in a courtroom, they can't pinpoint with DNA evidence and other type of physical evidence that the people were there. That's what makes it so frustrating because, for example, just before the place closed up at 11 o'clock p.m., that's when a man was discovered there to have used the bathroom in the back. This was just before closing, and it's been theorized that he was one of the perpetrators because there in the back in the area for the restroom, he stayed well past closing, and he may have been the one that actually kept a rear door open to ensure that the attack could happen either with himself having an easy escape or having others being able to come into the back and then also do the attack itself. And then also customers stated that yes, they saw a couple that left the shop just before 11 p.m. saw two people sitting by a table there at the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop, just sitting around, but they were acting very fidgety, like they knew something was weird about them, like they weren't there just having ice cream, having yogurt. It's like they had something else on their mind, but it just hadn't happened just yet. So those people, the ones that were in the line that saw this man go back to the bathroom, and then the other couple that saw these other two people there sitting at the table just acting strangely, they have been the closest possible to being witnesses to the actual perpetrators, the ones that did this type of crime. Again, there's a chance it could not be these guys, because who knows, someone else may have entered well after the store was closed and the employees there and the friends were help cleaning up the place. But just logic dictates that what were those guys doing there as far as the table? What were the guy doing there in the back, in the bathroom after it was closing? It just seems to point more towards them being the perpetrators. And like I mentioned in the past video, I can't really mention their names here because several of them were tried and I believe retried or going to be retried. They were initially found guilty, but then it was released. Like in other words, the case was overturned, and then when they were going to be retried, it was stopped, and there was alternative suspects that were brought on board, but eventually evidence, like in terms of DNA evidence, and then also confessions, false confessions, in other words, the idea of coercion being involved or other confessions that weren't following legal guidelines, all of that stuff played a mixture when it came to the people closest to being the actual perpetrators, the actual suspects themselves, not being found guilty. That's what makes it so frustrating, because it's so close to having the truth, to having the actual notion of who these people were, and then facing punishment for it, but being so close but so far away when it comes to things being overturned and then others not having a retrial. There's even a chance that those people weren't even the perpetrators themselves, but that they in turn were innocent, and then the real perpetrators are still out there somewhere waiting to be found. The notion on this is the fact that a perpetrator DNA match has been found by the FBI, but this is apparently not being released, at least until I guess more evidence is linked to it, or some other type of DNA fragment points more towards the identity of this man, just because there's too many people that share this DNA as well. But yes, as far as the actual act itself, I'm just going to highlight it. It's gruesome and it's very tragic, but I'll just highlight just a brief portion of it. It stated that shortly after, it would have been somewhere after 11 p.m., but before 12 p.m., that's when this happened. That's when whoever this perpetrator or perpetrators were, plural, they in turn locked up when the place was locked, they were there inside that store, that I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop, with these four girls. They ended up bounding all of them together, some of them using like makeshift bounds, like with socks, others using actual underwear for the actual bounding as well. They were all found nude. They were found raped as well. But the most gruesome part on it is that they were all executed in the head with a .22 caliber gun. So it was just basically just all lined up and then shot after they were raped, in other words, and then they were piled on top of each other there within the store. And then with the use, and it's been theorized, with some form of an accelerant, that's when the entire place was burned down to try to trace away any evidence associated with the perpetrators. And where things really take a more horrible turn is this. One of the poor victims, Amy, was actually thought to have survived and pulled herself away from this wreckage before she too succumbed either to her injuries or to the very, very severe burns. And this is because the actual bullet itself ended up not killing her. It missed part of her brain, or missed her brain entirely, but it still caused severe head damage. And so here she was crawling out from the bodies themselves of her friends, sisters, and so on. And then there she was trying to get away, but as much as she could, she just eventually succumbed right there in that spot, all around the fire, because of her injuries. And then the fire took care of the rest of it. Just all around, just real horrible when you think about it, that these were the last moments associated with these four poor young women. Two of them they're working, two of them as friends. They are just trying to get by that night. And then whoever these horrible people were decided to end them in this very gruesome fashion. Just again, this is why it caused Austin to quote unquote grow up, because these are the type of crimes that people thought does not happen in Austin, at least back in the 90s. This was something that was happening to much larger cities elsewhere, and now it all of a sudden was occurring here. And every single time, again, there's a solemn anniversary, it brings up the idea of, will there ever be evidence, something pointing towards investigations showcasing who these perpetrators were and getting them convicted and then getting them the punishment that they deserve. Unfortunately, 30 years have passed now. The more passage of time means that there's going to be less and less chance that something like that happens. In fact, one of the supposed perpetrators actually is already dead. Back in 2010, a police officer was conducting a traffic stop, and when this person started to struggle with the police officer, they actually took out a knife, stabbed the police officer, and the police officer retaliated by pulling out a gun and shooting them. So if you believe the notion that one of the perpetrators was there that night, and they were the ones that I just mentioned that had this encounter with this police officer, then at least then you have something as far as some finality there. But who knows, again, because at the end of the day, this is still an active investigation. It is actually still active here in the Austin area. Maybe the DNA technology will have something one day pointing towards who these people were. I talk about those cases here on this channel periodically where many years later, a person is found as being the perpetrator themselves, but they're long dead. And that means that while they escaped punishment because from their act, at least there's some finality as to who carried out this crime. And so there's the idea that that could still happen sometime soon, where there's going to be a breakthrough set of evidence, or somebody comes forward and confesses, and then they'll be able to have this. It's frustrating, though, because, again, the main people that are considered the ones that committed this crime, most of them are out there free. And the notion is that maybe they are innocent, maybe they aren't, but at least right now, to this day, it causes a lot of mysteriousness and frustration with this case because of the horrific nature involved and the idea that nobody has been found guilty on it just yet. But yeah, just wanted to talk about that. 30 years solemn anniversary when it comes to the 1991 Austin Yogurt Shop murders. Check out the link below again if you haven't had a chance to see my earlier video. I plan on doing another visit to this place sometime soon to again pay tribute to the poor four victims, and then I'll probably do a live stream from there. So be on the lookout for that sometime soon too. But if anybody has any more comments, anything else I might have missed, then please post them below. What about those of you that happened to be in the Austin area when this occurred? I was near Austin, but I was really, really young at the time, like super young. So all of this would have just passed by me at the time. But if anybody has a more personal experience when this first occurred, then please post those comments below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.